What is going on, gunfighters? Saddle up for another episode of Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. First and foremost, I am a Christian, a servant of God, and a follower of Jesus Christ. God has blessed me to do many things in my life, for I could do nothing apart from Him. U.S. Marine Corps combat veteran, did a couple of tours in Iraq. As an assaultman after my combat tours, I was an urban warfare instructor for the Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. Also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. Also did several years in law enforcement, LAPD. I worked regular assignments and more specialized assignments. Been a private contractor for a 3-letter government agency. That's all I'll say about that. Been blessed to be a state rifle and pistol champion and West Coast regional rifle champion. Won more shooting competitions with the talent that God's given me than I can actually remember. Was blessed to be the commander of a tactical team in a large metropolitan area. Our primary job, the reason we primarily existed, was to stop active shooters. I got the opportunity to head up and be the commander of that team. I grew up around guns, hunting and shooting, and competing at a very early age. Been blessed to hunt all over this beautiful country, from whitetail on the East Coast to mule deer on the West Coast, and bear and elk and all manner of things. I've even been a professional big game hunter and guide. But again, most importantly, I'm a Christian. And I am your host, Michael Melito. Welcome to Gunfighter Life. So, Comback cartridges. Cartridges that I personally, and others I've talked to, would like to see have a resurgence, a reintroduction, with all these new calibers coming out all the time. Year after year, you gotta get this one. It's 100 feet per second faster. This one's got point whatever better BC. But if you see that elk at, 595 yards, this is going to give you a 2 inches better drop than the cartridge from last year. Whatever the case may be, and marketing is nothing new, and cartridges come out all the time. But I think some would be cool to see have a resurgence, have a comeback. The first one I'm going to talk about is the 7.62x25 Tokarov round. This is a hot, zippy little round. It doesn't have Magnum in the name, probably because the Russians don't use that nomenclature. But if they did, it probably would. It's a hot little round. The manual here lists 86 grains at 1390 and 87 grains at 1390. That's hot. That's a pretty hot load. Now those are on par with, let's say, 380 kind of bullet weight range. With the 380, you're talking a 90 grain bullet, but under 1,000 feet a second. Remember that Tokarov round, you got 87 at 1390. That's no slouch. Now I was looking at this, and I was thinking at first it would be too long to fit into a modern 9mm size pistol, but I don't think that it would. Looking at the case overall length, it should fit. It would be really cool to see somebody come out with a conversion barrel for your most common Glocks, M&Ps in 7.62 25 Tokarov. I think that'd be really cool. It's a cool zippy little round. There are some people that just really like it. I don't think I'd be in line to buy one. There'd be a certain subset that would really like that. Also made me think of a really cool pistol that came out, I think, in the 90s, and that was the Medusa. If you're not familiar with the Medusa, it was a revolver designed to fire 9mm, 380, 38 Special, 357 Magnum, and probably some other cartridges. Anyway, fire a bunch of cartridges through this revolver. I think it would be cool if they did something like that with a large frame handgun. Most people would think of the Glock 20 or the Glock 21, but they're not my favorite. I'd go with a M&P large frame, like an M&P 10mm, M&P 45, but in either one of those, and you get a kit, like a roll-up kit with different barrels and different springs and different magazines where needed. A lot of them would share the same magazine, some wouldn't, but you could have, say, one handgun like that, one frame. You could swap out a barrel and go from 10mm to 40 Smith & Wesson to the 7.62 by 25 Tokarov to 9mm. You'd have some extra room in the magazine and the slide would move more than it needed to, but plenty of 1911s are chambered in 9mm, which is a way smaller cartridge than it was designed for, so I don't see why it wouldn't work mechanically. Especially on the Glock, the extractors are super easy to change those dimensions. Cool if you had a Medusa-like modern semi-automatic handgun where you could, again, shoot 9mm and 40 and 357 SIG and 10mm, 45 ACP, 7.62 Tokarov. I think that'd be a really cool concept and a really cool thing that probably hasn't been exploited yet. However, I think just a conversion barrel for 7.62 Tokarov for people that have a bunch of that ammo stockpiled or want to be able to shoot that caliber and a modern handgun. What would also be really cool, those SIG 320 chassis systems. You know, it's just a fire control mechanism. If you could get that and like one of those small Roni type kits, and Roni's a brand name, but one of those small type kits where you make it into a small handy little carbine to fire 7.62 Tokarov. That'd be pretty cool because that would be a pretty cool little zippy small game round, little varmint round. Especially if you were reloading and you loaded it with some kind of good fast expanding bullet. Those velocities that we quoted were pretty hot, and that's out of a handgun. Shoot that out of an 8 or 10 inch barrel, it's going to give you a lot better ballistics, I think. So one of those kind of conversion kits for like a PDW and 7.62 Tokarov, and especially for just plinking and small game hunting, that'd be pretty cool. It'd be a pretty cool round for that. The next one I'd like to see make a comeback. The next one I'd like to see make a comeback, a resurgence, would be the 9x23. Now, if you're familiar with the 9mm, what everybody calls ubiquitously the 9mm, it's the 9x19, right? You'll see that stamped on a Glock barrel or something, the 9x19. Well, if you know about cartridges and ballistics, you'll know that the 19 denotes the case length. The 9x23 obviously is bigger and longer, which should tell you there's more powder in there. A bigger powder charge, a more powerful 9mm. Why? Well, because unlike when this cartridge came out, now there's a lot more 1911s chambered in 9mm. That wasn't a thing not too long ago. And if it was a very custom thing for like Steel Challenge or something like that. And it would fit fine. In fact, I think some of the issues you get with the 1911 and 9mm, it was designed for a longer, bigger cartridge. The length of that cartridge, you have a little bit more free travel before that cartridge goes into the chamber. Well, the 9x3 is very similar in overall length to the 45 ACP, which is what that cartridge was designed for. So in the 1911 and also the Glock 2021, the M&P 45 full-size frame, those kind of guns, you could fit this cartridge in there. If you're talking about a modern STI, which is what I'd like to see it in the staccato, I guess. There is no modern STI because they switched to staccato. But that double-stacked kind of frame, and even a single-stack, you're going to get the same amount of capacity as you get with the 9mm. So you're not giving anything up there because, as far as the circumference of the cartridges are going to be the same or very, very similar. So you're going to get the same amount of capacity with that. And you're looking at a 124 grain bullet at 1460. I say again, 124 grain at 1460. That's 357 Magnum power levels right there. And you don't get any of the craziness that you need for like a Kunin in 357 Magnum. Not that that's not a cool gun, but you have to deal with rimmed cartridges. You have to deal with a much longer frame, which means a lot of proprietary parts. When you could just get the 9x23, there's tons of magazines that will work already for those rounds in the 1911. Again, there's already a lot of 9mm 1911s. It wouldn't take much. In fact, I think for my STI, it may just take a barrel. The magazines would probably still work. There's a spacer in the back I think I would take out. Because again, the 9mm is shorter than the parent cartridge that was designed for. I already have 9mm mags, so probably just the barrel and the recoil spring. You'd be ready to rock and roll with 9x23, and you'd be getting 357 Magnum kind of numbers out of that. Now, it hasn't had the R&D and everything that either the 9mm or 357 Magnum do, so it's not as proven, but if you did a little bit of that and saw what projectiles worked well at those velocities, it would be a formidable, handgun cartridge. And I think this came out at a time when those weren't really around. There wasn't a lot of people clamoring for 9mm 1911s, but there are today. So I think it's a viable choice. So I'd like to see it make a comeback, the 9x23. The next one I would like to see make a comeback would be the 30 carbine. The 30 carbine is just a fun, plinking, awesome round. Obviously designed for the 30 carbine. It was actually designed first, I believe, and the 30 carbine was designed around it. 30 carbine is a cool gun, but they're getting to be old and collectible now. It'd be cool to see this round come on again strong. It'd be cool to see Ruger come out with like a beefed up 1022, which I think they may have loosely based on a 30 carbine to begin with, but a light, handy little carbine based off the Ruger 1022 with even a rotary magazine, or a really good magazine, because that's kind of one of the weak points of the initial M1 carbine is the magazines. They weren't meant to last, 70 years when they were made. But a really good modern magazine design, a really light, handy carbine. People kind of think that cartridge is not powerful. Well, when you compare it to 30-06 in an M1 Grand, no, it's not. But when you compare it to a very powerful, what we would consider handgun cartridge, the 357 Magnum, the 30 carbine has more energy than the 357 Magnum does. It's a good little cartridge. It's effective out to, 300 meters. I don't know how many deer have been taken with an M1 carbine round, but probably quite a few. Especially with a modern magazine and then the modern bullet designs. You could have varmint rounds, you could have deer hunting rounds. You can chamber it in a revolver. There's revolvers chambered for it, but I'd like to see it in a light, handy carbine. Again, like a 1022, a little bit beefier with a rotary magazine, a good solid magazine. I'm sure they'd come out with a classic wood hunting version, and they'd probably come out with a more tactical version with a muzzle brake or something like that. But I think that'd be really cool, and I would like to see that happen. Probably somebody also could come out with a AR magazine and an AR upper in 30 carbine. It wouldn't really be my cup of tea, but it'd probably be somebody's. The next thing I'd like to see make a comeback is the 5.7 by 28. You may think that's already making a comeback, and it is. But I'm talking about the good ammo. I'm talking about the ammo it was designed for. Now, there's something about you can't have the actual ammo because it's armor piercing, it's fired in a pistol. But I don't really understand that, because plenty of people have green tips in their ARs, and there's plenty of these AR pistols, air quotes, that have the green tips. It doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. M855 or M855A1 out of an AR pistol, I have to believe, is more dangerous than a small, normal 5.7 by 28 round. And I'm going to get on something real quick about Orwellianism and newspeak. It's not a high-capacity magazine. It's a normal magazine. If the Glock, 17 was designed with a 17-round magazine, that's not a high-capacity magazine. That's a normal magazine. If the AR was designed with 20-round magazines, 30-round magazines, which I'll point out was designed by a civilian. It was a civilian company, a civilian that designed it. That's its normal magazine. It's not a high-capacity magazine. That's the normal magazine. Anyway, if the 5.7 was designed for a certain FN ammo, then that's its regular ammunition. And you should be able to fire it as such. So I'd like to see people be able to exercise the Second Amendment and have the actual ammo that cartridge was designed for, so that somebody could protect themselves with that gun at its full potential. Make a comeback is the 7x57 Mauser. This is a great cartridge. It is a great well-rounded hunting cartridge. It is a great all-around cartridge, the 7x57. It's a good, mild recoiling, capable of anything cartridge. And when I mean capable of just about anything, there was a man in Africa when, hunting elephants was popular in Africa, who took, I don't know how many elephants, and I can't remember his name right now, but he took, I don't know how many elephants with the 7x57 Mauser. That was back before we had a lot of these modern projectiles and modern powders and everything else. I think it's a very well-balanced cartridge. I would love to see it make a resurgence. I would like to see, the Winchester Model 70 and the Browning and the Rugers come out with a run of these again, make them popular again. Did a show recently about, the first deer rifle. Well, a first rifle for a good center-fired rifle capable of hunting pretty much anything in North America, except for all but the biggest bear. The 7x57 Mauser is an awesome cartridge. If you had the right twist rate on your rifle, you could shoot really good bullets for varmints, really good bullets for deer-sized game, and really good bullets for heavier game. And those heavier for caliber bullets in the 7mm tend to do pretty well. Also, if you had this rechambered in modern rifles, you could up that pressure a lot more. Now, most ammo companies wouldn't do that because somebody might put it in their old antique, turn-of-the-century Mauser and blow the gun up. But if you're hand loading and stuff, you can really reach the full potential of this cartridge, much like you can with the 6.5 Mauser. It's a great cartridge, and I really like to see it, have a resurgence. I think it's a really good, well-balanced cartridge. The next one I'm going to touch on, just did an episode on the cartridge and did one on some of the cool rifles chambered in it, but the 350 Remington Magnum, I think, is an awesome little brush carbine. I called it the Dixieland Dragoon. Like, for the cypress swamps of the South, or the Mississippi Delta, or the Green Mountains of Vermont, anywhere where there's thick, dense cover where you're going to need a handy little woods carbine, that 350 Remington Magnum will be a great little cartridge. It's got impressive numbers. It fits in a standard action. I think it's a good cartridge. I think both times it was brought out, it was underappreciated. That being said, I don't think now is the right time. Now people still seem to be in full swing on this, 18-pound PRS rifle, shooting elk at hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of yards, riding up in their side-by-side and things. There's nothing wrong with that, but that's not the way that I like to hunt. And I think we'll see a pendulum swing back to the more traditional, maybe spot and stalk, still hunting at what I would call reasonable ranges inside of 300 yards. People start doing that, they'll realize they don't want these, 12 and up pound rifles. They might want a short, handy little carbine. And when that happens, I think that the 350 Rem Mag would be a good choice to bring back. So those are my top picks for cartridges that I would like to see have a resurgence, have a comeback, have a reunion tour, whatever you want to call it, right? If I missed some of your favorites or some that you really think should be on there, you can scroll down and leave a comment so everybody can see it. You can write it in a review if it's on the podcast so everybody can see it. You can contact me at goodshepherdtraining.com. Also, if you like this content and you want to become a patron, you want to support, get some cool insider content, there should be a Patreon link in the show notes. With that, the tactical tip of the day. And it's nice to have the right tool for the job, especially an expensive gun you don't want to mess up. One of the things that comes in really handy that's not super expensive, the Winchester gunsmithing driver set. It comes with all kinds of the Torx heads and the Allen heads and the flatheads. Especially the flatheads. You can really mess up a gun putting a lot of tension on something if it's not exactly the right flathead. One flathead does not fit all sizes. If you really care about the fit and finish of the gun, you probably want to be careful with that. Anyway, that Winchester set, there's probably other companies that make them just as good, but that Winchester set is one that I've had for a long time. It's not a lot of money. It's probably worth the investment if you don't have something like it. The tactical verse of the day. Peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. You might notice a difference in my voice from what it normally is, the baseline that you're used to. It's because I have COVID. I'm sitting here looking at a positive COVID test. I was hoping I would test negative by now. Anyway, it's just one of those things in life, right? You get sick, it happens. But it reminded me of all the fear that went around with when I guess COVID's still a thing, but when it was a big thing, when people were freaking out and so much fear. I'm not saying not to take precautions. I'm not saying not to be ready. If you've listened to this or the Alpha Male podcast, you'll know I'm all about being prepared. But don't live in fear. You're called to fear God and God alone. Walk with your head up high and be a man. With that, thanks for listening and have a blessed day.